Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 15th day. We're almost to Friday, folks. I can't wait. Got a big weekend planned. Hope you do too. Happy Father's Day weekend to all you fathers. In case I forget, so I'm going to have to make a note to tell Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez happy birthday tomorrow. Happy Father's Day ahead of time, Carlos. If I see you today, we've got great numbers, viewership numbers on that's been growing on Friday. So you all like Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez. He'll be on the program tomorrow. Today, got a great show tonight, okay? Going to talk about this Conor McGregor. It's a pretty serious allegation against him, sexual assault, rape. Those words were thrown out in the New York Post articles after incident that happened during the game in the finals, game 4 last Friday. Also, he was, involved in that where the stunt got out of hand where he accidentally hurt the mascot, but also Antonio Brown news as well. The new SEC 2024 schedule. I'll talk about that because that's for the SEC football. Remember, Oklahoma and Texas got quite a few takes on that. Zion Williamson met up with the owner and the general manager of the New Orleans Pelicans. That's interesting. Potential trade news. I'll talk about that. Talk a little Ja Morant as well, which nothing has came about. There was I've got a few more stories here. Going to be a little bit different show tonight, but we'll hit the ground running. I've got all my notes here on my phone. Let's go ahead and take the first break, and I'll be back here 49 seconds here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then, I'm back here live. Okay, also I did want to throw in, I'm going to touch on this story, this NIL story about let me make sure I got these women, their name right here. The Cavalier twin, either way, they are the Cavender twins, okay? They are two female basketball players that had get a lot of NIL money, essentially. There was a writer, Ethan Strauss. They felt like that it was like a hit piece. It was supposed to have been a fluff piece, and they were deceived in the interview, and it turns out to be a hit piece by it's Free Press article called "The NCAA Has a Hot Girl Problem," and I'll get into that. I'll get into that here in just a little bit here, folks. But first, I wanted to talk about this Conor McGregor. There were two stories out today simultaneously with two guys that are rags to riches type of people. Conor McGregor grew up in Dublin, Ireland. He's a UFC fighter in his 30s as well. And rough neighborhood, rags to riches. He food stamps, you name it. I can relate. I was born in a rough neighborhood. went to I've told you about this many a times, folks. Kindergarten, had to walk through the projects at one time. I can relate to all that. Now, that being said, I've got some friends that watch my show in Africa and stuff, and I've hit the lottery compared to some people. So I want to be, having things in proper perspective. That being said, Conor McGregor, he has been accused of rape / sexual assault. I mean, that's the way these articles are written up. The Miami police are looking at it. Apparently, something happened between him and this woman in a bathroom where the security was watching, blocking her or something like that of that nature. It's a pretty graphic story. I'm not going to go into the graphic details of it. He obviously denies it. He hasn't been arrested or anything, but the police are looking into the UFC fighters, the UFCs. They're looking into it. And also, I mean, that was last Friday night when the mascot supposedly got hurt and put in the emergency room. I don't know if that was fake or real, but apparently it was a stunt that went wrong. And the mascot ended up getting hurt in that same game at the Miami Heat game last Friday in Game 4. And simultaneously today, Antonio Brown, the troubled NFL player, the cancer that I said that possibly Stephon Diggs can morph into, he was kicked out of the Arena League for not paying his monthly fee and or fine or both, according to multiple reports. He no longer can have his team there. I say that, I bring up Antonio Brown and McGregor together because the similarities are just almost, it's like these guys are on the same path. Brown, like McGregor, has been into it with teammates. He's been sued off the field. McGregor was once sued for a guy not having a drink with him, and then he punched a guy in Dublin. He's had problems with women as well. Like Antonio Brown, Brown has had numerous problems on and off the field. I've read a long story a few years ago, back when Brown was cut from the Raiders, that Antonio Brown, he's the kind of guy that he doesn't like to play any of his debts. We saw that when he lost his arena team. He just bought the team, went through multiple coaches in April, and now he's already lost the team, voted out of the league because he's not paying these fees. It was emergency voting, and he's done there. But him and McGregor, same type of childhood. Brown, Liberty City, Miami, very rough area. Another rags to riches guy. And these two guys, same age practically, these two gentlemen, one guy from America, one white guy, one black guy, same type of issues. But, my thing is that these two athletes, professional athletes, I think that it's not going to end well for either. And I hope I'm wrong. They both have great stories. There's a lot of gang issues down there, gun violence, gang violence down in Liberty City. You could see the way that McGregor acts, that he came up rough too. And out in Dublin, Ireland, I don't know too much about Ireland, but he said, a lot of his stories back up too. But the similarities are just unbelievable. And it's two guys at the same time, around the same age. They're on the same path. I noticed that other fighters, they don't get along with McGregor. They said he goes too far in things. He's been suspended from the UFC, like Brown has been suspended. I mean, it's unbelievable, like the same guy. And ironically, McGregor gets in trouble in Antonio Brown's hometown, because Brown's from the Miami area. Like I said, he grew up in Liberty City, which is like an area around inner city Miami, from what I understand. So as far as McGregor, I don't know how serious this rape allegation is. But when you start using that word, it gets pretty serious. But I'm just afraid that two of these guys, it's a great rag, but sometimes we just don't know how to handle success in life, you know, and it's really unfortunate for these two gentlemen. I want the best for them, but I got a feeling that these are two tales of guys. They just don't. You say, well, take them out of the hood and take the hood. You can't take the person out of the hood, but can't take the hood out of him. There's some truth to that, but also there's many stories of guys growing up fighters, growing up really poor. Basketball. I mean, look at LeBron. You know, I don't agree with LeBron on a lot of stuff, but he's doing a lot of good things. You know, went to multiple schools. Yes, he did hit the genetics lottery, but with his hype, he's really turned into a pretty good success story. I was reading today, he's, you know, got another apartment building for the unfortunate there out in Akron. So there are success stories, but I tell you, man, that was a crazy story. Conor McGregor and Antonio Brown. How ironic that these guys are kind of on the same path here. So I thought that was an interesting story. Let's see how it plays out. You know, hopefully these guys will see the light and they'll both get it together at some point. I'm not holding my breath on either of those situations, if you ask me. Okay. Talked about Zion Williamson. We've been talking about him for a couple of weeks now. Okay, folks. The former number 1 overall pick in 2019. Talked about last week. He was in the news. He had a baby, and we read that was a stripper, which that's just his business. But then this porn star OnlyFans model, whatever the heck you want to call her, comes out and says that he's been with me and blah, blah, blah. She embarrasses the guy, humiliates him on the internet, which it sounds like he kind of brought all this on himself. Then reports come out this week, we're a week away from the NBA draft, that maybe the Pelicans will be willing to trade him for that number 3 overall pick. Okay. I talked about that a little bit yesterday. From the Portland Trailblazers here, you know, and I don't think they're going to be able to get this guy that they're trying to get, but he has met up with the owner today. That's the latest there. He met up with the owner of the Pelicans and the general manager of the Pelicans. Nothing's happened, but there has been a discussion. Nothing officially has been reported from that. There was also reported that there's a weight clause. When he signed his extension last year, there was a weight clause in his contract. You look at that, you look at the off-court stuff. Again, that off-court stuff means nothing if you're winning. The stuff of the personal stuff with the stripper and everything, the porn star, that means nothing if you're winning. But if you're overweight and you're losing and you're out of shape, that says that this guy has a lot of bad habits. He lacks discipline. And he also, there was a report that he would like a change of scenery yesterday as well. So something could pop off with Zion Williamson. I don't, you know, whether I tell you what, Portland. And then obviously we're waiting on the Ja Morant suspension, which is supposed to come up after the finals. The parade was today for the Denver Nuggets. I was looking at some of the video, folks. That thing looks like something out of at the end of the war and World War II, where there was a Navy guy kissing a random nurse in Times Square. That's what it looked like. I mean, so I don't think that the commissioner, Adam Silver, wants to break that news on the punishment of the suspension of Ja Morant. I don't think he wanted to do that. My guess is news dump day. I think that news breaks tomorrow. Friday, when organizations or whatever, when they do not want something to stay in the news long, they'll dump it on Friday afternoon. You know, don't let it stay around the clock. You know, don't let it stay in a loop. Just dump it on a Friday afternoon, and we'll talk about it next week, right? And then meanwhile, something to happen over the weekend and it'll blow it off the headlines on everybody's everybody's computer screen or phone or whatnot, and then it'll kind of slide underneath there. So that's my guess. My guess is that that'll break on Friday, which is tomorrow. The Ja Morant. You said, why are you bringing these two things up? Well, Ja Morant was the number 2 pick in the same draft. And we talked about not just the gun issue with the flashing the guns. He's had incidents. He's had lawsuits. He's threatened people at the mall, other teams. His dad gets into it with the Fox guy that had to be. So it's a lot of small things that are starting to look more serious with Ja Morant. Okay. And plus the team plays better often in the playoffs and even in the regular season when he's not there. I like Ja Morant. I think he's a great player. I thought he was the better player of the two when they were drafted. I've also said that, I thought maybe when this second issue came down after he's been suspended for 8 games, Ja Morant, 8 games. Now he's saying it's a toy gun. His friend flashes a gun when he's doing Instagram Live, knowing that this thing, excuse me, folks, cotton mouth, knowing that he's coming off an 8-game suspension for flashing a gun in the first place. Okay? And that's just a bad message to the league. Of course, we know, yes, Second Amendment, yada, 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 but that looks bad for the league. He knows that. He was aware of that, and he let it happen anyways. Okay? So my whole point is both players could use a change of scenery. Whether you get full value or not, we talked about this. The Denver Nuggets just recently won the whole thing. They won the NBA championship. And the one of the biggest pieces of this team has had Joker healthy for 3 years, and they didn't quite live up to expectations the last 3 years. What's the difference between the last 2 versus this 1 year, or the last 3 versus this year, is that Jamal Murray's fully healthy. Jamal Murray was a 7th pick a few years ago for them. Murray came apart in another superstar trade in the Carmelo Anthony trade. So if you know what you're doing, you can, if your organization knows what they're doing, you can move off a star and the world's not going to come to an end. Jamal Murray was part of that trade. The draft pick, he was a 7th pick, and he was part of that trade. And now this team has a ring, and he's a big part of it. He was a big, big part of that. Jamal Murray, and of course, the Joker, that 2nd-round pick, he wasn't even a first pick. I mean, he wasn't even in the first round. He broke all kinds of records. We talked about that ad nauseum. But also, I bring this up about change of scenery. Change of scenery is good. It gets a young person's attention. Back in 1990, Chris Carter was a talented from day one wide receiver in NFL. He's a Hall of Famer right now. His work, he said he had drug and alcohol problems, mainly alcohol problems, when he was playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to say he was cut and picked up by Minnesota or traded. Means no, never mind. But his change of scenery helped him realize that he was on a really bad path there. That's his words, not mine. And he ended up becoming a Hall of Fame receiver. He says, I've never made it. He said, I've never even claimed. I might have been out of the league if I would have stayed with Philadelphia. All this ties together. When you give a young person, 19, 20 years old, that kind of money, and on top of that, you're asking them to carry a team of men, and be the face of the franchise. That's a lot of pressure. They're still growing mentally, and they're still growing physically. So if Ja got traded to Miami for a Tyler Hero, who sounds like he can use a change of scenery, he's a little too caught up in the limelight. and then you throw a Duncan Robertson because Ja's numbers run about the same as a Damian Lillard. I think that a guy like that, he's not a guy that lacks. Let me say this about Ja Morant. I watched some of his workout videos with his dad and everything and preparing. He doesn't lack work ethic. He just needs some mentorship, a Jimmy Butler, a Miami culture. I think he would be a good fit there. He's a younger player, and he doesn't have the injury history. Now, of course, you're saying, well, he's going to miss 30, 40 games. The NBA PA, that may be a myth. They may only suspend him for 20 games, but that team can hang float for a while. As long as they go on a run, like I said yesterday, if the Heat can get a 4 or 5 seed, they'll be okay, preferably a 4 and up, because you'll get home court for that first round. You want to set the tone, don't want to play that many games. Maybe a Robertson and Tyler Hero, some few draft picks for Ja Morant. That would be good. He said, well, I don't know, Miami. No. Everybody that goes to Miami, they realize that they have to go with that strict code. At one time, I don't know if it's still like this, but Pat Riley had a curfew and everything. So I'm still one to subscribe to the culture, the toughness of this team. They could have quit. They could have quit Monday night, but they didn't. That was a 4-point game. That tells me that this team has a rock-solid culture that don't mess around. The opposite of Memphis. A reporter once said, oh, God, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a Valor reporter. He says, man, the players kind of run the show down there in Memphis. What's his name, Lance Taylor or whatever, the head coach there? He's not very he's too loosey-goosey with this team. That's a pretty talented team. Pretty deep team in Memphis. They draft well, but he runs somewhat of a loose ship. Totally opposite down in Miami. Love to see a Ja Morant there. That's the kind of energy they need. They're a little bit of an older team. Butler Butler's 33, their main piece there. He'll be 34 next year. He's getting long in the tooth. And the Zion, listen, Zion's 22 years old. Remember, he didn't stay as long in college as Ja Morant. So if I traded, even if I got a Brandon Miller to go to New Orleans and some more draft picks, I might trade Zion Williamson. Up to Portland for that 3 pick and some future picks, maybe some players to fill out the what's it got, Nurkic or whatever, some players to fill out that contract. I understand that. But that's a pretty good pick, man. That's a pretty good pick. And Zion, again, he's got a weight clause in his contract. And I think he can kind of settle down up there in Portland. That'll get his attention. That's a pretty good distance there from New Orleans to Portland. Nothing could happen, perhaps. But I'm reading a lot of stuff could happen. The NBA free agency and the new season starting here in a few weeks. We got the draft coming up next week, and then we'll have free agency coming up right around the 4th of July. That's what it seems like. I remember it was one time I heard on 4th of July I was working a day, and I could not believe that Kevin Durant left Golden State or left OKC to go to Golden State. I understand leaving Westbrook, but I wouldn't have jumped to a championship team that's already won a championship a year beforehand and turned it into a super team. Totally messed up his legacy, if you ask me. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. This was a good scope. I haven't done good scope, bad scope in a while. Maybe I'll get back on that maybe next week sometime. But this is one I told you so. 74-year-old Greg Popovich, folks, has signed a 3-year extension. Speaking of NBA draft, he is going to work with, I think, Victor Wembanyama. We talked about that before, that Wembanyama, the French phenom, 7'3" to 7'5", and he is well over 7 foot. That guy has got quite a few inches, an inch or two, maybe 3 on Rudy Gobert, a former Frenchman. He has been mentored by Tony Parker. There was a picture on the internet today of him and Tony Park having a Tony Parker jersey on when he was like 9 or 10 years old. And now he has been playing professional basketball over there as a teen in France. But, you know, like I said, Gus D'Amato, he said, now he was a little bit older than Popovich is now, but Popovich's 74. He'll be 77 at the end of this contract. But, Gus D'Amato said that Mike Tyson gave him something to live for. Popovich teams have been terrible here lately. He's been spouting off, going on and on about gun control and politics crap, and he's went a little farther off the end here this last time around than even Steve Kerr and LeBron James with all that nonsense. And a lot of it is because he's frustrated because the team's terrible. And I also read today, I didn't know this, folks. I thought Tim Duncan had been there the whole time. Tim Duncan worked 1 year with Popovich, and it just didn't work. He's no longer an assistant there. That being said, hey, listen, you still got Manu Ginobili, works in basketball operations. It's still the Spurs system. I do respect him as a coach. He is a great coach. He just had some terrible players here lately. I think this will rejuvenate Greg Popovich. Obviously, he signed 3 years. He wants to work with Wembanyama. He might not finish that, but I'm sure he's going to put on a good assistant there to work with Wembanyama. My guess is we'll really notice something in probably 2 to 4 years. We'll notice a major change, perhaps a playoff appearance, maybe a play-in game appearance. You want to give him about 7 or 8 to actually win an NBA championship because you still have to build up players around them and everything. They've got draft picks and all that good stuff. And they'll be able to – there was a report maybe they get Chris Paul. I guess that would be more of a mentor type of role as well as an on-the-court player there. Obviously, he's 38 years old. But so Popovich, there was a report at Legion's Luke Lee. I can't remember what the name of this site was. Let me go ahead and check and see. Legion Hoops is what I read this off of. SpursTalk.com. So Greg Popovich is expected to sign a 3-year deal around $14 million. So that is all about women, y'all. It's a funny thing. If they would have got the 2 pick, this other guy, no. Wembanyama, big guy, taller than David Robertson, taller than Tim Duncan, very skilled. He's like, yeah, that's going to put some life into me. You know, that's going to put a little bit of life into me, according to Craig Popovich. Woo. Okay. All righty then. Let's see. Switching gears here. There was a lot of talk about these new schedules, man. A lot of the national media outlets talk about these new. Now, remember, in college football, next season, it's going to be crazy. I'm just telling you that right now. It's going to be crazy good. You're going to have a 12-team playoff next year, okay? Plus, Oklahoma and Texas will be playing in the SEC. And, somehow I misread something the other day. We talked about the women's national championship game, right? Where Caitlin Clark, big draw, was over 10 million. And some articles said something about that outdone the Georgia-Ohio State game. I don't know if that was at a low point there in that rating or whatnot at the 10 million. Maybe it was doing better than some of the other high-end regular season college football games. But I looked up the rating here because you're having Oklahoma's going to be playing Alabama. Florida has got one of the worst schedules, and I'll talk about it here in a second. But Georgia and Ohio State Peach Bowl last year, most watched game of the college football season, 22 million viewers. And TCU and Michigan had 21 million. That's pretty close to the NFL. To give you an example of actual TV games, not social media views and everything. Now, I've told you this now, the NBA and social media views up in the billions. But some of these other countries don't quite have the technology yet or the ability to get the whole game and the data on the phones. I think that'll change in the near future. The finals got 5.6 million, just under 6 million views. And that was the best in 5 years. That was the NBA finals. This college football game, 22 million, Ohio State and Georgia. Now, remember the national championship between TCU and Georgia was total blowout. I'm sure that was much less. So you're getting 22 million. Now you're getting teams, for example, let me see if I can get this. I screenshotted all the biggest games of next year. You're going to get Oklahoma at LSU, Alabama at Oklahoma next year, Texas A&M. That's a huge rival. That's going to be back. Georgia at Texas. Texas could potentially have Archie Manning, the nephew of Peyton Manning, and Eli Manning could be starting. Quinn Ewers may go to the NFL after this season. These are massive, 100,000 plus stadium, 90 to 100,000. These are going to be some really, really highly rated games here. So I do think that this will top that 20-something million. These playoff games are going to be close to NFL numbers. It's not going to get the stuff, just to be frank here, the Super Bowl topped out at 122 million. It's not going to do that. Dallas Cowboy game playoffs got 49 million against the Giant, the 49ers, excuse me. Dallas Cowboy 49, 40, almost 50 million people watch that game. These games are massive, folks. But I just, for some reason, this story kind of slipped my mind. I did not think that, that this was going to be this soon. But yet, time flies when you're busy. And a lot of people were talking about Florida's schedule. Now, Florida, I'm sure get this guy's name right. I don't know why I can never memorize his name. Not Brett Venables. That's the Oklahoma coach. But the Florida head coach here, and I know Florida was before Billy Napier. I know Florida, University of Florida, when Napier took over, when he first year there, the year before he took over, they were 6-7, and it just became a recruiting issue. Former coach couldn't do anything there. So he took over, but they were 6-7 again last year. You want a coach to make some type of difference in year one. And I really did not see that. The problem is with them, they lost to worse opponent. I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt last year. They were beat 30-3 against Oregon State last year. All right. Totally blown out. Of course, Tennessee beat them, but that's a rival game. That was a road game. That was actually more of a respectable loss because Tennessee only had 2 losses last year. The problem with Florida is they're not recruiting that well. Tennessee and Georgia's out recruiting them the last 2 years. They're down in the 20s coming into 24. I think they're probably going to have a pretty rough year this year, breaking in a new quarterback. Now, I could be wrong. There. But I don't think so. I think he's just a bad coach, just a bad hire. Maybe a good coach. He's probably over his head. It's a lot of pressure at Florida. I've told you all this. Coaches that are considered great coaches, really good to great coaches. Steve Spurrier, folks, 10 years, that was it. 10 years, 92 to 02. Remember, then he took the Washington, then Redskins job in the NFL. You say, well, what about Urban Meyer? Man, he killed it. Yeah, 2 national championships. Was it 3 SEC championships? And 5 years. had a heart attack, had some heart problems, took a few years off, took the Ohio State. The rest is history with Urban Meyer. 5 years, Urban Meyer. Pretty successful. A lot of drama. They've got a documentary coming out about those Florida teams in, I want to say, August or maybe next month from Netflix. I'm going to have to renew my Netflix for a couple of reasons. That's one of them, to watch that. It's either next month or in August. But check out this. People were talking about the Florida schedule in 24 because it's the hardest schedule probably in the history of college football. You know how we always complain about, man, I mean, if you look at Georgia's schedule this year, they got 3 or 4 games before they play anybody in the top 30. You know, you got a lot of Marshall and Savannah State to start the season. Listen to Florida's schedule next year. If this year don't kill off Billy Napier, next year, my prediction, again, I don't want anybody to get fired, but I'm here to call balls and strikes and give you a pulse for what I see happening. Next year, we'll probably take out Billy Napier, okay? We know that Miami is on their way up. They recruited better. Cristobal's a very good recruiter, right? Well, I know he had a rough first year, but that guy's got players coming in. Not the same thing in Florida. Well, they open up against Miami at home. Okay? Then they got a break, but UCF is I think UCF gave them a lot of flack last year. Well, they got to play UCF at home too. And we at home too. And then they have to go, at some point, they have to go on the road to Florida State and still play them, right? That's 2 or 3 pretty rough games. And, yeah, you got a Sanford in there, but you got Kentucky, LSU. By the way, there's no more divisions next year. There's no East and West. But next year, Florida would have to play Kentucky at home, LSU at home, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, Texas A&M with all their players. Remember, they had the number 1 class last year in the country. Remember that was the big deal with Nick Saban getting really ticked off about Jimbo Fisher and the NIL stuff. And speaking of that, just going nuts. Well, those players will be juniors. Those players, and you know, they've got a better offensive coordinator there. I can't remember the guy's name, the controversial head coach here, Bobby Petrino. So Texas A&M be a lot better this year. Mark my word. If they don't, Jimbo Fisher be done. But anyways, so they got Texas A&M at home, Georgia, of course, Tennessee, at Texas. I just mentioned they play at Texas. I don't know when, because these are just opponents for next year. They got to play Texas, at Tennessee, which is turned out to be a really good team, at Texas, then at Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State may be lighter, easier, but they could potentially lose to Miami, Florida State, Kentucky, who's beat them a couple years in a row now, LSU with Brian Kelly, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, Texas A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas. I mean, this team could lose 10 games next year. This team could be 1-11 next year. I mean, UCF is they could lose all the, except for maybe Sanford. That's the hardest schedule in the history of college football right there, perhaps. At Texas, at Tennessee, LSU, Texas, at Georgia. Georgia's coming off 2 national championships, and they got the number 1 class coming into that season. They haven't got nothing out of the top 5. They haven't fell out of – so Georgia's still going to be a powerhouse, you know. So Billy Napier's gone. Billy Napier will be gone after the 2024 season, if not fired during the 2024 season. And my guess is that they'll go after Deion Sanders. I think Deion's going to do really well up there in Colorado. He's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. He got a lot of exposure for Jackson State. I was just finishing up watching a documentary on a 4-part documentary on Deion Sanders and Jackson State. And he brought a lot of publicity there. He cut a kid that he had the team vote on it. I thought that was a little wrong, but he just the way he rolls, man. Deion, he cut. He said, and he didn't say for what. They just did a vote, and then Sanders ended up he released a player. So, and they may do good this year. I think they'll probably win 8 games, 7, 8, maybe 9. His son looks good. They brought in a lot of players there. So Florida, the probably the most difficult schedule of all time. Oklahoma. Now, Brent Venables, very good defensive coordinator for Clemson. But Venables, we saw they were 6-7. Here's my problem with that. When they were 6-7 last year under Venables, and I'll talk to Alan Perez. Alan may be watching the show. He's out in Oklahoma. He thinks they're going to be a big comeback. They did have a very good class this year. It was 5th. Not so good coming into next year. Venables is over his head. He's another guy. He is coordinator material. The Oklahoma coach. He is coordinator material. And they got a pretty rough schedule next year as well. Like I said, 11-2 to 6-7, not good. Now 9-3, I can understand. Or 8-4, you lose a few field goals. 6-7, are you kidding me? Yeah, he's over his head, man. But shoot, Oklahoma. Let me make sure I can find this Oklahoma schedule here. It's pretty rough. I had it somewhere, folks, because I know that either way, they're still playing Texas. Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, Kentucky, at Ole Miss. It doesn't get any easier for the University of Oklahoma. I mean, that's a 4 or 5 loss season, and they'll probably not play well this year. So Venables and Napier will probably lose their jobs because of these schedules. It is what it is. This is the beast that us crazed fan bases have created. But I can't wait, man. I wish we could fast forward and play it this year. I mean, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, LSU, like I said, A&M's going to be back. Tennessee, is Tennessee legit? Tennessee, and I'll talk about this later on this summer when we go over college schedules. They got a lot of grad transfers there in Tennessee. Got a lot of transfers there. Nobody knows how these players are going to wind up, but they've got quite a few. And I'm going to get Phil Steele's magazine and read over like I do every year these past few years and see what the deal is there. But University of Tennessee, this Milton guy, this quarterback there, they've got a very talented freshman there out of California. I think Nikolai or something. He's got a weird last name. I think he's Hawaiian. Kind of reminds me of Marcus Mariota a little bit. They favor him. He's a little taller guy. But either way, they could be a very good team now. But, but when you look at teams like LSU, Alabama, they had the number 1 class this past year. Got some quarterback issues, but other than that, they're Alabama. They're set everywhere else. And like I said, I mentioned A&M, but Georgia's still going to be strong. Some are saying maybe they win 3-peat. I don't think so. I believe Texas is going to be really strong again this year. And because they've had 2 top 5 classes. Yours is beat out Archie Manning. He held him off. He shaved off the mullet. That quarterback out there, he's going to be really good. Some are saying this team may be a national championship this year, that Texas team. But Oklahoma's going to take a step back. USC, those guys, I know they're going to the Big Ten next year. So the college football is going to be crazy. The money coming into college football next year over the year is going to be insane in the membrane. Speaking of NIL, okay. All right. The Free Press. This author, Ethan Strauss, he is a guy that used to, I want to say, well, he wrote for The Athletic. He covered NBA, Golden State Warriors. He's been around for a little while. He's not one of those Skip Bayless guys. He's been around for a little while. And he does an interview with these two really attractive, Hannah and Haley Cavinder, 22-year-old, two basketball players, University of Miami. You may have seen them scanning through the internet on Twitter. I've seen them a couple of times. Very attractive, blonde-headed girls. Nowhere near the best players. They're not as good as Caitlin Clark or Angie Reese, the two that were in the national championship game back in March. They're nowhere near. But they're really, really attractive. Like the Anna Kournikova, remember the very attractive tennis player. They got a lot of, endorsement deals. Women, men want to see them, and young girls want to be them. Okay, and these two women here, he writes this story. The name of it is the NCAA. Remember NIL? It's very new. This thing's only been around since 2021. National Image and Likeness, and it's called the NCAA is a hot girl problem. And he talks about that these women are making more money, essentially, according to this article here. I want to say they made like $4.5 million to $6 million here. $4.5 million on TikTok, and have earned full-time influencers another additional $2 million. And they're working, sign endorsement deals and agreements with companies whose values they align their YouTubers like Jake Paul and sports gambling outfit BTR. I don't know what that is. Either way, the guy kind of sounds like a hater, if you ask me. Yes, sex sells. Yeah, no, is life fair? No, it's not. Okay, but he's saying that Caleb Williams, probably the best quarterback in the country, $2.6 million. They make more than he does. But life ain't fair. I mean, sex sells. I remember the creator of Barstool Sports, Dave Portnoy, said that he was having problems selling his newspaper. It was like a magazine or newspaper or whatever. Barstool was not an online site in its early beginnings in the early 2000s here. But he says when he started having really attractive women handed out and start to get models there, people to model, they might have not been models, but they modeled for his outlet. He started getting viewership up. You've had the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. I've got a communications degree. I've interned at News 2, WKRN, back in 2000, before I graduated, 2005. And because I was going into news reporting and all that, I got a communication minor in journalism. I was going into journalism. But what started to turn me against that was the very attractive women that worked in and around the office, not just the ones that own the air, but the producers. And I can see why they got their job. They wasn't doing that really good at work, but they were really hot. They're really attractive. Kind of a turnoff right there, But, I understand the business side of things. Jason McIntyre and Colin Cowherd always give anybody credit for they're talking about something. And they were talking, Colin was saying, my son's 17. He is idealistic. And I was thinking, what do you mean idealistic? He said he likes to see things as, well, this would be an ideal situation or that. And I had to tell him that's not the real world. You know, what's the old adage? What is a person worth? Well, it's what somebody's willing to pay. You know, and the idea that look at the Kardashians, very attractive, and look at what they're worth. Did they work the hardest? No. Do they have an elite singing talent? Are they great actresses? No. They're very good looking, and they can sell products online to young women. Okay, and guys like them. Famous basketball players like them. Okay, that's the same thing with these two women, except they're actually Division I athletes. He's saying that colleges shouldn't participate in this. But if it comes off sleazy, so be it. It does bring your university coverage and whatnot. But again, when they did this interview with him, and I'm looking at some of their pictures, the one picture on the front here, it doesn't look that bad to me. There's more provocative pictures on Instagram that you will see. And that's just a regular social media website, it's just, so I don't think that, I think that there's some hater. And I will say this. It's been a thing, and I've heard Jason Whitlock talk about this before, that the idea of mixing more attractive women involved in sports talk shows. You see it on game shows. Bob Barker, the great Price is Right. Remember that with the Bob's Beauties and everything else. And now I just talked about the Undisputed. They had the really attractive woman that's kind of like she gives the questions. She's the narrator. I don't want to call her the narrator, but she gives the guys questions and she calms them down and goes on about that. And I've talked about it with my friend Corey before. That's on the program, and he says, that stuff's like mixing food. If I want to know about sports, I'm trying to see, get some conversation in what this team is doing or what that. I don't want to be looking at a woman dressing provocatively because that's a distraction, And they do that because people like the sex appeal. The sex appeal. I mean, you see it on ESPN. You see, and I notice more and more women, like, for example, Malika Andrews with ESPN, she was dressing provocative, and there was a lot of stuff going on Twitter about it a few months ago. And I noticed that her last interview with the Denver Nuggets, the Joker, that she's dressing more businesslike, She's dressing more pantsuit and everything. She doesn't want to be perceived that way, And you'll hear a guy like a Joy Taylor. Her brother played in NFL. She works for Fox Sports, but Jason Taylor's an NFL player, and she comes off as this wanting to be taken serious type of woman in sports. But she used to fill in for Colin Cowherd on FS1. And one day I was sending my friend Corey, might have been somebody else, that I said, okay, this woman wants to be taken serious here, but before she's filling in as a host of a major sports talk show and TV, it's on TV and it's simulcast on the radio, she's wearing a shirt that shows her cleavage, a very provocative. So you don't want to be criticized just because you're using your sex appeal to get ahead, but you turn around and wear this, so you're being hypocritical, You see, and a lot of people resent. Me personally, I don't like those shows like that, but on the same token, if somebody's willing to pay these young women money, and again, it doesn't look that provocative, I'm okay with that too. Because I'm a free market capitalist, and life ain't fair, man. Life is not fair. I mean, that's just not the way things are. That's not the way the real world operates, and it shouldn't be. We shouldn't have government control and everything and all that stuff. if the Miami Hurricanes, if that gets a lot of attention to their university because they got 2 players. These girls are like 5th-year seniors, or whatever. As the COVID year, they got the extra year, and they're making a lot of money out of the University of Miami. You know, there's a gymnast that's very popular out of LSU, Olivia. I can't remember her last name now. He's got a lot of jealous people. You know, so. Hey, sex sells. You know, that's the old adage. It sells at the beginning of time, and it sells now in 2023. No matter what people want to say, you know, and whether you like it or not, I have no idea. But I just don't like envious people. Something about envious people just irritates the fire out of me, man. You know? But anyways... if you all like the show, share the show. Got Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez will be on the program tomorrow. And quite frankly, I was looking at some of my views on YouTube and some of my plays there on some of the podcasts. You all tell me you like Carlos. You like me and him arguing back and forth. We got that Skip Bayless Shannon Sharp thing going on here. Of course, I would never call him Skip Bayless or Shannon Sharp. Both of them got their problems, if you ask me. Well, so stay tuned tomorrow. We'll be back on there, and there's no telling what's going on. You know, I've got a few things I want to ask him about the finals, and I got a whole list of questions. I may bring this story up with him. Okay, so I appreciate everybody, and again. If you like the show, please share the show. Please subscribe to the YouTube. And if you can, subscribe to the Spotify. It doesn't cost money. Just gets my numbers up, folks. Type in the word sports, the word scope, and then you go to that Spotify there. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. I'm glad you're still not mad at me here. But I just, you know, that I understand both sides of the whole sex appeal and sports thing, you know, and that's just part of life. But yeah, please subscribe though to my podcast and the YouTube. I got to get my numbers up. You know, I need to get one of these girls on the program maybe to get things up. And then once I get the numbers up, then I'll put me in. We'll do some serious sports talk. And then maybe I would bring in. I wouldn't be reluctant not to bring attractive like fitness person, especially with the summer coming in and things slowing down, which, you know, kind of reminds me, there's a lady that isn't a fitness instructor out of Florida. I may bring her on to do that. I'm not opposed to doing that. I just don't want to make my show about sex appeal just to get viewers. I think that is a little that just kind of a little sleazy to me. That just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I can't put my finger on it because I want the show, like Jason Whitlock said. Hey, listen, you know, listen. We have to. Guys will not say what they're really thinking if there's a very attractive woman between them, because he thinks they may be thinking about her versus the topics, and it takes away from the quality of the program. That doesn't mean I won't interview someone that has that type of appeal. Because I don't discriminate against anybody. If you're an interesting person and you're good at what you do, that'd be something that I would like to have on the program. So either way, I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.